In a matter of seconds, the Milan Fashion Week stage, usually filled with high expectations, suddenly transformed into a space of mystery. Then, without warning, two figures appeared, and the world seemed to stop breathing. No one was truly prepared for what happened next. Kai and Tan Songyun stepped onto the stage with an aura that not only captivated but also challenged all assumptions. They weren't professional models, they weren't experienced presenters in the world of high fashion, and they certainly weren't names previously associated with the grand Milan runway. But that was precisely the magic, the unexpectedness that triggered a wave of incredible emotion. The audience, comprised of renowned magazine editors, legendary designers, and global celebrities, exchanged glances. Some were surprised, some skeptical, and still others simply captivated. In a highly structured world like international fashion, the presence of these two Chinese actors felt like a violation of unwritten rules. But in just a few seconds, those doubts began to crumble. Kai opened with a calm yet powerful voice, while Tan Songyun followed with a sincere and touching expression. They weren't simply reading a script, they were telling a story. Every word felt alive. Every movement felt meaningful. This wasn't just an opening act, it was a captivating, emotional performance. What made it so different was the chemistry between them. There was nothing stiff or contrived. They flowed, as if the stage had been waiting for their arrival. The initially hesitant audience began to immerse themselves in the atmosphere they created. In an instant, the atmosphere shifted drastically. The cameras, previously moving haphazardly, now focused intently on these two figures. Even the journalists, usually busy taking notes, fell silent, watching intently. It felt like a moment that would never be repeated in fashion history. Many wondered, how could this have happened? Without a background as professional hosts in the Italian fashion world, this move felt like a major gamble. But that's precisely why its impact was so powerful. Kai and Tan Songyun brought a fresh perspective, something refreshing amidst decades of tradition. And it turned out, the world was ready for that change. Each sentence they delivered not only introduced the collection but also touched on deeper themes about identity, courage, and cross-cultural travel. They didn't just stand on stage, they bridged two worlds. The audience's reaction was evident. Some were moved to tears, others gave a standing ovation before the opening segment even finished. This was an unusual reaction, especially for something completely unannounced. Behind the scenes, the crew was also shocked. Many admitted they didn't expect this decision to have such a significant impact. Even some industry veterans called it one of the boldest moments in Milan Fashion Week history. But what was most striking was how composed Kai and Tan Songyun remained. There was no sign of nervousness, no major slip-up. They appeared as if they had been doing this for years. Their confidence wasn't just visible, it was palpable. This was no coincidence. There was something deeper than a surprising performance. This symbolized a shift in direction in the global fashion industry, one where geographical boundaries and backgrounds were fading. Milan, long known as the center of European fashion tradition, was suddenly opening the door to new interpretations. And Kai and Tan Songyun were the faces of that change. After the opening act concluded, the applause was longer than usual. Even after they left the stage, the energy they left behind was still palpable throughout the room. The critics began to write. Some called it revolutionary, others called it risky, but successful. But one thing everyone agreed on, this moment would be unforgettable. On social media, the reaction exploded. The video of their opening act went viral, garnering millions of views in a short time. Many admitted they couldn't believe these two actors could change their perception of what a fashion show host could be. And the big question arose again. Was this the beginning of a new era? An era where the fashion runway no longer belongs solely to those who fit the mold, but also to those who dare to bring something different? Kai and Tan Songyun may not have come from the fashion world, but that night, they weren't just part of Milan Fashion Week. They were history. And as the spotlight slowly dimmed, a new realization began to dawn on many, that what they had just witnessed was not just a creative experiment, but a true paradigm shift. The world of fashion, so exclusive and full of invisible boundaries, suddenly felt broader, more inclusive and bolder. Whispers in the audience turned into earnest discussions. Several senior editors were seen jotting down lengthy notes, not about the upcoming collection, but about the opening that had just rocked the runway. They realized that this moment held more value than mere aesthetics. It was a statement. The younger designers, on the other hand, seemed the most inspired. For them, the presence of Kai and Tan Songyun was proof that boundaries can be broken. That background is no absolute barrier. That the courage to be different can open up previously unimaginable paths. That energy continued throughout the show. Every model's step on the runway felt like it carried an echo of that opening. Even the collection presented that night seemed to be influenced by the emotional atmosphere that had been established from the start. This was no longer just a fashion show. It had become a full-fledged experience. Backstage, the conversation intensified. The names of Kai and Tan Songyun were constantly mentioned, analyzed, and even debated. Some questioned whether this would become a new trend. Others worried that it was just a passing phenomenon. But no one could deny its impact. Meanwhile, the global public began to engage. Comments came from all over the world, from Chinese drama fans to international fashion observers. They all had one thing in common: amazement at how these two figures were able to create such a powerful moment without any apparent preparation. What was most compelling was how deeply personal their narrative felt. They weren't trying to be someone else. They weren't trying to conform to established standards. Instead, by being themselves, they were creating a new standard that was hard to ignore. And perhaps, that's where their true power lies. A sincerity rarely seen on such a grand stage. The courage to appear without a mask. A simple combination, yet one that has become all the more rare in a world steeped in image construction. When the night finally came to a close, one thing was clear. Milan Fashion Week hadn't just presented the latest trends, it had created a story. And at the center of that story, two previously unsuspected names were now written in ink that wouldn't easily be erased. The next day, the reverberations of that night hadn't subsided. International media outlets were still filled with footage of the opening, constantly replayed, analyzed from various angles, as everyone tried to understand how a moment could feel so powerful and so unlike anything they'd ever experienced. Some headlines even called it an unplanned turning point. Observers began to connect this event to the profound changes taking place in the global creative industry. That the lines between actors, models, and presenters were becoming increasingly blurred. That modern audiences were no longer seeking visual perfection, but also emotional connection. Kai and Tan Songyun symbolized this shift. They weren't simply invited guests, but representatives of a new generation unafraid to venture into uncharted territory. Their courage is actually the main attraction. Interestingly, several major fashion houses are starting to signal this. There are rumors that cross-industry collaborations will become more frequent after this. That the fashion scene will no longer be exclusive to those from that industry, but open to anyone who can bring a fresh perspective. This has certainly sparked considerable debate. Some traditionalists believe this move risks diluting the essence of fashion itself. On the other hand, many see it as an inevitable evolution, an adaptation to a changing world. Amid all this debate, one thing remains consistent. The names of Kai and Tan Songyun continue to be mentioned with admiration. Even those who initially doubted them are now beginning to acknowledge that what they are doing is no fluke, but something with real impact. Even more striking is how humble they both remain. In brief interviews after the event, they didn't claim major success or try to take excessive credit. Instead, they emphasized that the experience was an honor, not just a personal achievement. This attitude only further strengthens their image. In the public eye, they're seen as not only talented but also sincere. A combination that's increasingly rare in the high-pressure worlds of entertainment and fashion. And ultimately, this story isn't truly over. What happened in Milan wasn't the end, but the beginning of something bigger. A door is opened, and the world now awaits. Who else will dare to step in and create the next surprise?